It's Tuesday, September 3rd, and I'm your host, Paula Hersey. On today's show, we learn about substance abuse in the workforce, what it may be costing you, from Vera Herrick of Barnstable County Human Services. And don't forget, Barnstable's boat pump-out service is still operating. Keep our waters clean. Now for a look at municipal and legislative notes. Construction season has arrived in the town of Barnstable with a multitude of projects across every village. Two streetscape projects resumed this week, Route 149 from Lovell's Lane to Route 28 in Marston's Mills, and the length of C Street in Hyannis. A new streetscape, that's a hard one, folks, project gets underway in Barnstable Village this week, and a 2-year Massachusetts Department of Transportation Highway Improvement Project kicks off this Thursday. The intersection of Route 28 and Osterville-West Barnstable Road, with school buses now running and construction detours and traffic, please slow down, calculate extra time in your commute, and drive mindfully through construction work. Want up-to-date information on these roadway projects? Sign up for the weekly e-newsletter at the Town of Barnstable's website. What is substance misuse in your workforce costing you? In the past 10 years, persons employed in the trades and services industry made up 65% of opioid overdose fatalities on Cape Cod. The Barnstable County Department of Human Services has produced an employer toolkit to help employers determine how substance abuse is impacting their bottom line in terms of lost productivity and increased labor costs and employee health and wellness. The opioid crisis costs an enormous amount of money. With me today to break that down and what people can do to learn more about how much money it costs is Vera Herrick from the Barnstable County Human Services Deputy Director. Vera,
hello.
Some of these numbers that we talked about just before the show are mind-boggling and staggering. But first, tell people who you are and what you do at the county.
I'm the Deputy Director of my department, the Barnstable County Department of Human Services. I am also basically a research and cost analyst and policy analyst on issues of public health affecting our population, both on the chronic disease side, less so on the infectious disease side, that's more the health department. But given that the substance use issue and problem is emblematic of a chronic disease related issue, we are front and center in working on that and helping coordinate county resources and thinking on the subject.
Right. So you've developed a website that is a resource for everyone in the community, from businesses and organizations right down to parents, called My Choice Matters. Give just a brief synopsis of what people can find on that website and how this public information campaign came about.
All right. The web address is mychoicematters.net. And on that website we have various toolkits and resources that will help parents, teachers, employers, you name it, to understand the substance use related issue by substance. It's not just this overarching thing, but we go through marijuana, cocaine, meth, the various opioids obviously affecting our community, with facts about these substances, and then tools and resources for our community to understand and address the issue within their particular scope. So if it's a parent, your scope of direct interest is your immediate family, most likely your kids or other loved ones who might have an issue. And so the mychoicematters.net website is scaled in such a way that you can find answers that you're looking for that have a basis in evidence in order to help you understand and take action.
Great. So let's come back to the opioid-related deaths. You've taken a decade worth of data, and people, I'm not sure always understand, but data tells a story.
Yes.
So tell us the story of what you found.
Let me step back even from the opioid crisis. We did, 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago now, we did an overarching analysis of substance use on Cape Cod to identify the various trends and the various substances of interest and concern on our little island, in our spit of land here. And we found that alcohol is in fact the most prevalent substance that is misused on Cape Cod, by both by number. There's a good 15,000 people on Cape Cod who are addicted to alcohol. Not just using, we all have a social drink or, go out with friends and what. People who are addicted, dependent upon alcohol, is our underlying base endemic problem. And that's a public health term, meaning this is our grinding year in, year out problem that forms the baseline. It's almost like it's the canvas on which all of our other more specific substance use related problems are painted. So we have specific other substances, over the years that come and go in terms of their prevalence and how concerning they become. In the last 6 years, opioids, particularly prescription opioids, started us out in a very serious fashion with an epidemic, meaning that the year-over-year increases in deaths from the use of opioids started to jump dramatically from 2012 on. So that a statewide epidemic was declared at that time. And so against this backdrop of alcohol, which has its own social norms and issues, which we are deeply concerned about, we also then had this leaping opioid-related epidemic problem, which has caused a great deal of headlines, concern, deaths across the age brackets, not just older people. And so we mounted a very strong effort to try and understand these deaths, these mounting number of deaths, with an eye toward hopefully understanding features of their employment lives, their educational backgrounds, to try and get upstream of this and put into place perhaps some preventative measures. So let me talk about, do you want to get a word in, Joyce? I can just keep going.
No, part of what we want to do today is educate businesses out there of what they can do. There's some data that you've discovered by studying death certificates.
Yes. So we studied opioid-related deaths for the decade between 2004 and 2014 for the purposes I just mentioned. And we found there were about 281 deaths from opioid-related issues during that period of time on Cape Cod. The chart that looks like this, though, it goes up. It's stable till about 2012, 2013, and then it jumps, okay? So, but I took a decade's worth of those deaths because I wanted to bracket the last economic recession to remove economic issues from a main consideration for why the deaths would spike, right? So we wanted to bracket the 2008-2009 downturn and that. What we found was, doing all of these reviews of death certificates, which we found that the very disproportionate number of deaths of those 281 were amongst trades and service workers. Good 65% of those deaths were amongst trades and service workers. That means carpenters, chefs, plumbers, landscaping, people who have physically taxing jobs. Yep. We found an equivalent number of deaths of people, deaths amongst those people with an educational attainment of high school or less. In other words, 65% of the deaths were trades and service workers. 65% of the deaths-ish were also had an educational attainment level of high school or less. And these two issues, not problems, but issues are intertwined. Right. With a low level of educational attainment, you only qualify in our current economy for certain types of jobs, and mostly those jobs are physically taxing jobs. So when you have physically taxing jobs, perhaps less low levels of health insurance or not really great health insurance, you tend to self-medicate in order to keep working. You need to get to work and so on. And it's very simple for when you're self-medicating with a highly addictive substance for a problem to take off, and that ultimately and tragically to culminate in death. So this is the genesis that we understand from the work that we did of some of these disproportionate deaths in our trades and service workers. Amongst the trades and service workers, so that group, workers in the construction trades were at the greatest risk of death. Okay, so you have trades and service workers, and then the subset of those, construction, again, in the construction trades, greatest liability for the risk of death. And so for that reason, we wrote a report, of course, and in that report is a variety of recommendations, many of which having to do with asking employers or recommending to employers that they try and get ahead of get their arms around this, and then get ahead of this with regard to some of their internal policies and procedures in order to make their workplace, number one, primarily safer.
Right.
Safety being job one, not only for the good of their workforce, but for the good of their bottom line. Because all of these fixes are mutually reinforcing for the benefit of both the employer and the employee. So what we developed was an employer toolkit. And what that is this is I'm sure you guys will have the link for it in your various outlets, but it looks like this. It's got two sides to it. On the front is basically, it introduces what the toolkit is and where you can go for more information. And it shows you that there's a calculator for the employer that they can click on and estimate what the substance use related problems is costing them in their own business. And on the back is general resources to address substance use related problems. The toolkit itself has various sections, and it's web-based. So you go to the web and you can see the various sections. There's sample HR policies. If you don't have an HR department, you're a small business owner, right. There are samples for language that you can put in place and areas where you can educate yourself on how to deal with your employees on this subject in a proactive and sensitive fashion while remaining within the law. Because there's a lot of employee law that pertains to this. Being in recovery from a substance use disorder or seeking treatment and being in treatment affords that person protections under the American with Disabilities Act. In the same way it does if someone is receiving treatment for a cardiac problem or diabetes. So employers have these considerations that they have to maintain a perspective on. And this toolkit provides information and insight on them from a variety of different points of view. It almost answers questions for them.
Right. And one of the things that I saw on this that was really brings it home to a business owner, especially a small business owner, is bottom line, right?
Yeah.
So there's a calculator that they can click on and actually find out how much it may cost or is costing their business.
Yes, based upon how many employees you have. It's a very simple calculator. You go in and it asks you how many employees do you have, where are you located in the world, United States and so on. And what the likelihood is of a substance use related problem in your workforce costing you. And those costs would be low productivity or calling out sick more than one would want. Or accidents, obviously accidents, having to replace an employee that you have to let go and then retrain someone else. Right. And in a very tight labor market, such as all of our tradespeople are seeing right now, we hear that from everyone, that they can't find workers, the type of workers they need. In a tight labor market, this is a particularly acute problem, because without ability to fill your crews with able-bodied people, you're losing money.
Right. So on the back side of this, when we're talking about the employer and they realize that they might have some challenges with some employees that might be substance abuse prone or substance abuse abusers, what are some of those steps that they might be able to take? Again, the sensitivity piece of it, privacy issues. Yeah. There's a lot that an employer really has to kind of, come to grips with. What are some of those simple things that they can do that might help them, get to this problem, and then maybe, like you said, upstream of it? You want, you have a good employee and they have an issue. What can they do?
All right, so just stepping back from a particular in-the-moment situation with an employee, I would say among the first things and the most important things that an employer should do is have a workplace safety policy. Particularly employers who are employing people in physically taxing trades. What is your workplace safety policy? Because the first, if a cause of action is brought against you by regardless of holding aside the substance use related issue, Exhibit A is going to be your workplace safety policy or lack thereof. So be smart and put these sorts of human resource policies a workplace safety policy in place. There are templates for these. We have them in the toolkit. You can access the templates for these sorts of things. So that is the first thing. Set out the parameters for what, and in so doing, you will educate yourself as an employer for what you have to do and what sorts of documentation information you need to put in place in order to best serve your business and best serve your employee. If you're sitting across the desk, now, on the personal level, if you're sitting across from the desk from someone who's come to you with a problem like this, first, you want to have your structures to rely on, but the first thing you want to do is be sensitive and open to this person, and make sure not to stigmatize them. They're trusting you enough to come to you with a problem, or you've seen fit through your supervisory channels to bring a problem you're observing to their attention. You don't want to stigmatize them. You don't want to make assumptions. You don't want to leap to conclusions. Someone who's having a lot of absenteeism or is distracted might have other issues going on at home, or might have other medical conditions, or might be taking medications that are causing them to act in a different way. So you want to be very careful on this subject, while at the same time being responsive to the employee. We have employers on Cape Cod, particularly in the construction industry, employers that I've spoken with who are construction contractors, relatively large firms, who've really gone out of their way to be sensitive and provide the ability for people on their crews, on their work crews, to take care of their own health issues that they need to take care of, substance use related and others, as a smart way of keeping them close to their business, keeping them employed. And so a flexibility and a sensitivity like that is job one. Secondly, I would gather as much information as I could from the person that they're willing to disclose without impinging on their privacy. And then, use your best judgment and also talk to your attorney about this. Put some things in place that will allow you to protect your business and at the same time be helpful and accommodating to your employees. And that starts with preparation. Don't wing this. Don't wing it.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
And again, having a toolkit, mychoicematters.net.
Yes.
Everything's up there. It's in digestible format of a 2-pager or a 1-pager. There's links to other resources.
Yes.
Anything else you want folks to know?
I think that whenever I speak publicly on the subject, we have to understand that substance use related disorders should not be stigmatized. They're common. They're treatable. People recover from them all the time. And it's worth our while as a community to be as supportive and inclusive of people who are in recovery and people who are seeking recovery as possible. It is the right thing to do from a moral point of view and an economic point of view.
Thank you so much, Farah. This was a eye-opening and enlightening, and I'm sure our businesses appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the easiest ways to keep our water clean and free of bacteria is to use the free pump-out boat service, operating in our harbors from Memorial Day to Columbus Day. Assistant Harbor Master Jared Smaller explains how the service works. A gorgeous day on Katuitt Bay. We are jumping on board with Jared Smaller, Assistant Harbor Master, and we're going to go pump out a boat. This is a free program to boaters here in Barnstable. Jared's going to tell us a little bit about the program, and you're going to see it live.
Already tied up to the boat. We open always wear gloves and eye protection. Get the cap open. Eventually. And up forward in the compartment here we have our hose. This boat has a fully electric pump, as does the other one in Phoenix. Pump-out boats use a diaphragm-style pump that pumps essentially right from your boat into the holding tank. Flip this on with cam lock levers. make sure it's closed so that we don't have anything happen initially. Turn it on. Then slowly open the valve. And we sit here, and here's a sight glass that shows what's coming through. And right now there's actually not too much in this boat. So right now it's just cycling through what it's got there. So that's pretty much done. If the tank on this boat was full, it would probably take about 90 seconds to 2 minutes for it to pump it all the way out. Close the lever before we open anything else up so that we don't discharge anything elsewhere that we don't want it to be. Slowly take it off. Remove the fitting. Back in so we can flush some water through. Secure our hose. Shut the pump down. That's essentially how the pump out goes. Nice and quick and clean. As you can see, there's nothing that leaks out. It's a completely sealed system. And the final step that we do is we leave a business card on board that does have all of the information for the pump out program. They have our phone number and the email address for the pump out program, so if you need service. And we put the date and the time and who pumped your boat. So when these people come back on board, they can see that their pump out was done and their boat's all set and the holding tank is ready for the weekend.
How important is it for the environment to do this on a regular basis and not get your tanks too full?
The tanks are they're a sealed tank, so unless you have a failure in the tank, there's not going to be any leakage for the most part. It's a good service because A, it's free and funded through state and federal grants, but it's also just our environment. I mean, the water is a huge resource here in the town of Barnstable in many ways, recreationally and commercially. Right over all through this area is a huge shellfishing area that the last thing we want to do is be pumping sewage into it. It leads to neurovirus and all kinds of other things.
Right.
And it affects the ecosystem and what we are as a town and as a region.
Right. And I know that we're here at the Cotuit town dock, but where else is this service available?
This service is available town-wide. We have a boat here that services primarily the 3 Bay area of Cotuit Bay, North Bay, and West Bay. And we also travel to Hyannis to offload. And then we will also stop in East Bay if we need to. We do have one regular customer over in East Bay. And then we also have another boat that's in Hyannis that services the Lewis Bay and Hyannis Port area. And that boat can come over here. This is a busier area because it is larger for us.
Sure.
That boat can come over here if we had a really busy day that needs to supplement. And then we have 2 shoreside facilities in Hyannis, both at Bismore Park. And then we have another shoreside facility in Barnstable Harbor because there just isn't as many boats. There aren't as many boats that need pump outs over there.
Right.
So the shoreside facility works well for us.
Okay. And the actual ability for people to, call and email on a busy weekend, what's kind of the time frame for folks? Should they, kind of anticipate getting the pump out or?
Yes. It's always better if you can anticipate and plan ahead for it. That gives us the opportunity for any weather issues. Yesterday it was really windy that if we wanted to do this yesterday, I would have tried to reschedule because it was just too windy.
Right.
We definitely don't want to cause damage to a customer's boat, to our boats. We don't want to get anybody hurt. There's too many opportunities for bad things to happen if it's a really poor weather day. Wind and lightning are our biggest deterrents to being able to do this.
Okay.
But it also allows for staffing changes and other things that may come up that need to take a priority. So we would like a few days notice if possible, but when we're out here on the weekends, that's what we're out here to do. These boats, although they can respond to emergencies and they're fully equipped to handle any of that stuff, the primary purpose of these boats, over and above anything else, is pump out. Again, they're funded through grants, and as part of that, they're to be used for pump out. So these boats are out here to pump your boat all the time.
And let's just take it to the conclusion. Once it lands in this boat in the holding tank, where does it go?
This boat will then go to Hyannis. We'll take it by water. And we will use one of the 2 stations over there. And then from there, there are 2 pumps over there. They're called peristaltic pumps. They just operate on a different style. A little bit heavier duty because they have a lot further to draw everything from, between emptying a 450-gallon holding tank on this boat into the town sewer system. So it goes right into a pumping station that's there at Bismore Park and ends up right in the town sewer system.
Excellent.
And our north side station as well pumps right from this tank there into the town sewer system as well. So everything is treated properly. It ends up just where it would if you were flushing the toilet at your home.
And where it should go.
Exactly.
Exactly. Excellent. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, things to do, places to go, and people to meet. Head on over to the town's website to download the Fall Barnstable Recreation Brochure. It's jam-packed with sports, special events, after-school activities, and just loads of fun. Spend the weekend picking out your favorites. Registration opens September 4th. Comments, suggestions, accolades, connect with us on Facebook, email us, or send us an old-fashioned note by carrier pigeon. Channel 18 works. For you, I'm Paula Hersey, and thank you for watching Barnstable Today.